in my opinion, the Invasions mode in Mortal Kombat 1 had a lot of potential. I mean, an entire season where you get skins based from one character on the base roster. I mean, the only thing that could ruin it would be to focus almost entirely on characters that were from the first game, extending out one season for far too long, so that content feels harder to come by than drinking water in the frigid Antarctic. Or giving one character with one of the biggest fan bases designs that were so obviously for a different character who was already getting an expansion. But I mean, they wouldn't do all of that, they did all of it. As a result, we only got 1 year of new Invasion seasons, and they are already repeating the same 8 characters, or 9 depending on how you feel about Melina's season. So today, I wanted to go over the remaining base roster characters and come up with concepts based on what I think their seasons could have looked like, but I won't be basing it on their Order of Darkness skins, as all of the characters have them, and it would be redundant to unlock the same skin twice. And with that, let's start off with
Kitana.
Now, this version of Kitana would be from a timeline where Denias were the conquerors and they were able to subjugate Outworld. But unlike the Outworld that was under Shao Kahn, Edenia was able to keep its beauty that it is renowned for, as we see a lot in Kitana's endings. They have quite elegant designs, and as we see with the other Edenias in the series. So I think the fighters could wear quite elaborate designs. A somewhat good basis for the fighters would be the Outworld Gala looks, along with the Earthrealm skins. You know, they're kind of high fashion, but some of them still keep that practicality for combat. And I imagine, given the fact that this is once again a more militant version of Edenia, they would have hidden weapons throughout their skins. Keeping on the subject of Edenians, next up we have
Danya.
And this version of her I based on her deception ending, where she was able to obtain godlike power, and since her Union of Light look is already seemingly based on either Aztec or African mythology, I think this design would be based on another pantheon centered around their sun god. So obviously it has to be Helios from Greek mythology. Well, he seems a little bit busy right now, so let's go on to ancient Egypt. That seems safe for now. Now, there is one thing this pantheon is known for, and that is the animal heads that the gods have. But I think that the animal heads of the representative god or goddess should be incorporated into the character's overall design for the skins and not just worn as a mask. For example, Melina can have both lions and cats throughout her outfit to represent both Bast and Sekhmet. Do kind of cover this version of Melina, as in some versions of mythology, Bast and Sekhmet are believed to be the same goddess, but Sekhmet comes out during war and Bast comes out when she's calm. Very similar to Melina and her Tarkatan forms. Continuing further, I think someone like Rain would have a ram for Khanum, a crocodile for Sobek, and these somewhat 22 unknown animals for Set. Honestly, pick one! And for Scorpion, he can ironically go for another member of the insect family and go for a scarab for Carapace instead of a falcon, which would of course represent Ra or Horus. Now I think Tanya would keep all the falcon imagery for herself. Let's be honest, she is very self-centered, and this way she is literally the shining sun of Edenia. So yeah, she would very much keep the falconry imagery for herself. But let's not forget, the sun will always be blocked out by
Rain.
This version of Rain would have unleashed torrential rains across all of his realms, flooding them all, and this would cause all the combatants to evolve amphibious or marine-like features, such as gills, iridescent scales, or the frozen axolotls have, which looks a little bit like coral. I mean, heck, even coral across their body would be pretty cool. And overall have a very alien presence to his season, but, you know, it's things from Earth still because it's marine life. Honestly, the deepest the Earth can go without dying. But I know a lot of people may say out there, why didn't you go for an Atlantis theme with Rain? I personally think that Atlantis is getting a little bit drawn out at this point. It's very samey. To be honest, I need the Greek theme for later. And going for amphibious or marine life could be really unique. As I said earlier, a more alien design. And before you're wondering, yes, the fire characters would have something to go off there. For instance, fire salamanders are amphibians and work once again for Tanya and Scorpion. And side tangent, apparently the reason that they're called fire salamanders is because when people used to burn the logs that the salamanders made their home, they wouldn't realise it until they were basically engulfed by flames and run out. So therefore, they were known as fire salamanders. Well, I guess it's true what they say.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
For Smoke, I could see him potentially having 2 themes rolled into one. One would be a Cyborg season. As I said earlier, I'm going for base roster characters, so Sector would not be in it as she was a DLC character. So giving it to Smoke is the best choice as he's the only other character who has been cyberized that's on the base roster. And I don't think a cyber season needs much explanation. Almost every character will get a cyber suit. I still can easily find images from MK9 where characters were designed with these suits, but I know they wouldn't work for every single character. A good example would be Baraka and Melina. So I think the second half of this season should be an Enenra season, and this would add kind of like a wispy, smoky effect around the fighters, around their limbs, which would look pretty sick, along with adding ashen grey skin, similar to Kratos, and I think being able to make parts of the fighters turn back and forth into smoke and solid would look pretty sick. And I think the way this could work in terms of the Mesa and the Invasion boss run would be about halfway through you would fight a cyber smoke drone but still unlock the cyber skin, and then later on you will fight a true boss version of Smoke without the cyber suit but being fully possessed by the Enenra demon. Now skipping over the next 3 characters in the roster because they already have season, no surprise there, we go on to
Li Mei.
And similar to Tanya, I think Li Mei's Titan would be from her Deception ending where she became Onaga's queen. In this timeline, her and Onaga would try to claim the Hourglass from Kronika, but during this Onaga would be finished. In a last-ditch effort, while he's still in full possession of Reptile's body, Li Mei would consume Onaga's heart, absorbing his power and becoming part dragon. I guess she got everything in the divorce. So fighters from her timeline would have dragon-like features such as claws and wings. Unlike Reptile seasons, I imagine the scales would have a magenta colour to them, as that is her colour. I think a good way to differentiate her fighters between Reptile's ones is to cover them in gemstones and gold throughout their outfits, which look really sick and would play on the old kind of trope of dragons hoarding gold and valuables, similar to Smog or Smaug. Going from justice to crime, next up we have the former Yakuza member
Kenshi.
And a big part of this character has always been the spirits of his ancestors. So I think it would be cool to base skins of different periods from Japan's history where his ancestors may have been from. For instance, the Heian period, the Taisho period, or the Edo period. It would be really cool to see characters in haoris and kimonos inspired by their abilities and, of course, of these times. Another possibility would be for him to have a season based on the movie Snowblind, as he was the main character of that movie, and it would be really cool to see. I think it was somewhat Mad Max inspired, so yeah, that would be sick. I think a lot of people could also quite valiantly say, what about a Yakuza theme? But he's already got a bunch of skins for that, and that seems to be where his All of Darkness skin comes from. So it's a little bit, once again, played out, so I don't think it's worth it. Now, moving on for a much more straightforward character, next we have
Baraka.
Could it be anything else but Season of the Tarkatan, where everyone will get arm blades, produce those bony spikes that we see him have, along with the Tarkatan teeth? It would be cool. And his MK11 ending works perfectly here for him to be invading in search for more exquisite meat. And while we've already turned the clock back to MK11, next we'll talk about
Geras.
For Geras, I think that his skins would be based off different points of time along all of human histories, along with deviations from histories. I mean, wouldn't it be cool to see a Renaissance katana, a steampunk Takeda, a futuristic Sector, a 19th century Transylvanian Natara? Those would honestly be really cool to see, and I feel like it really would expand out the skin pool for this game. Wailing up next, we got the Resident Banshee in Mortal Kombat.
Sindel.
And how perfect I think that would be for her invasion season, a Banshee theme where all the fighters have been infected by Banshee spirits, giving them an old and more decrepit look. And Sindel would have done this in order to ensure that she would keep her power, her beauty, her status in more of a Twindale move. And again, this would make sure that her status cannot be challenged. She will forever keep it, as Liu Kang said, that's what Twindale did in the old timeline. Now moving on from Twindale to her even more barbaric husband, conquering all timelines that oppose him. Next up, we have
General Shao.
Similar to Baraka, his MK11 ending works perfectly for him. Him having this timeline where gladiatorial prowess is the only thing that is respected, and the less armor that someone wears, the more respect that is given to them, because, you know, they're proven that they can take injuries and punishments and don't have to cower behind pieces of metal to keep themselves safe. So I think the skins would have the characters absolutely covered in scars and just in minimal armor. Again, perfectly representing Shao Kahn, and that's his reason to invade. He is a conqueror. What do we expect from him? Now, going off from Shao to his biggest sycophant, we next have
Reiko.
Now, remember what I said about needing the Greek theme for later? Yeah, I'm giving that to Reiko, as he does seem to have some Greek-inspired helms in his custom character slot, and being a part of Outworld's military is about his only noticeable character trait. So yeah, that's about all I could think of for Reiko. He's such a nothing character. Now, using some movie magic to bring some actual personality from Reiko's borderline apathy, next we have
Johnny Cage.
Now, for Johnny, there are so many ways you could go for an invasion season. One of them would be for the fighters to take on old movie characters, would be cool. Another would be combining the characters with the animals from the Animalities. That would be pretty cool, but take a red carpet spin on them, you know, try and make them look very high fashioned. I genuinely believe would have been sick to see in game. Like, take a praying mantis and import it onto Melina. Would have been cool. Too bad they couldn't do it. I believe that almost anything would have worked well for him as long as it had that Hollywood flair.
Kung Lao.
Kung Lao is a pretty hard character to think of a season for, so I personally think they should go to have a similar look with Scorpion season, where he used tattoos that represented fire and had dragons within them, but instead I think Kung Lao should have more of a wind mythological creature such as a griffin or anything along those lines, incorporating the tattoo along with wind imagery. It could look similar to Fujins from MK11 or Jinx from Arcane, or finally have the typical vortex patterns that we see him and Katana use whenever they use their spin moves. Yeah, there are a few things that could go, but yeah, there's not a whole lot for Kung Lao, is he? There's a lot of trouble distinguishing himself from Liu Kang, and that's existed ever since Midway. Now, for our last fighter, we have the demon from the depths in search of redemption with a trusty crystal side. We next have
Ashura.
Now, this version of Ashura would never reach her absolution that she so dogmatically chases after, and as a result, gives up on a goal and embraces her demonic side, falling into sin. And therefore, I think the fighters should be based off very typical demons, such as Serena's, or they could go for a bit more of a fallen angel vibe, which is a bit more biblically accurate Lucifer, where he was an angel, so therefore wouldn't typically have the red skin and horns that we associate with demons. But I just think the overall demonic look works very well for the Mortal Kombat series and would have just been so sick to see. And with that, that's all the base roster characters done. Thank you so much for listening to this point. How many of my invasion seasons did you agree with? Did you have any different ideas for a character? Let me know in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, if you want to, leave a like on this video. If you want to hear from me again, subscribe to the channel. And with that, goodbye.